Hi everyone, and welcome back to Planting for Wildlife. Today we're looking at my top 3 perennial plants with dark foliage. I first really noticed the impact of using plants with dark foliage when arranging hostas in pots, using dark Hukas to kind of dot throughout the display, which gave a really nice colour contrast. Not only do I love the dark hues in themselves that I think can add a lot to any planting scheme, but those dark colours really make the greens around them pop nicely, and when you're planting things like ferns or hostas, it's really effective. It's also a technique that you see quite a lot in contemporary garden design when they paint the walls or the fences black and then plant green plants or typically tropical type plants in front of that dark background. It really makes the plants in front pop. All 3 plants in this video are absolute favourites for pollinators, so will definitely benefit the wildlife in your garden. 2 of them I've grown in my own garden and have experience with, but one of them I've just seen in gardens that I visit and haven't grown myself. I want to make sure that as I research these videos and continue with the channel, I'm featuring both a mix of plants that I have grown myself, but also ones that are new to me, so that I'm learning as I go too. And if you have any experience growing any of the plants that I feature, I'd definitely love to hear about it in the comment section. On to my top 3 plants now, and I'm going to start with Huka. Now, if you're someone who likes to collect a lot of different varieties of the same type of plant, beware of Huka because there's an absolutely huge amount of varieties and colours to choose from. The colours range all the way from dark purples and silvers through to reds, rusty oranges, and then go all the way through to lime greens. The only Huka I have in my own garden at the moment though is this one. It's called Stoplight, I think because of the contrast between the red and the green foliage here. It's just coming into flower now in mid-May, but ultimately it's not a very good example of a plant with dark foliage. Hukas originate from North America and are hardy perennials, which means they don't need any protection throughout the winter. In colder regions though, they will lose all of their leaves throughout the winter, but they'll resprout reliably the next spring. In my experience, it's normally the darker purple varieties that keep their leaves better throughout the winter. But if winter interest is really important to you, then just avoid any varieties that are classified as semi-evergreen and keep them in a sheltered spot. Most Hukas thrive in partial or dappled shade where that vibrant foliage really pops. The dark purple varieties can normally take a bit more sun and it might even enhance the colour of the plant, but the more pale green varieties can get bleached if left in a sunny spot. Once established, Hukas can take dry shade, so they can also make great plants to underplant trees with. In terms of the flowers, they don't normally get too much attention, but they are long-lasting and favourite with pollinators. One word of warning with Hukas though is that they can suffer quite badly, especially if grown in pots, from a pest called vine weevil. Vine weevil attacks the roots and it's really weird because you pull the plant up and the roots have just disappeared. And unfortunately I think this has killed pretty much all of the Hukas that I've ever grown in pots in my own garden. I wasn't actually aware of this issue until I spoke to one of the plant experts at RHS Hyde Hall a couple of months ago who kind of identified this issue. She said that one way around it is to get something called parasitic nematodes, which you can buy and come in a packet, and then mix that with water and then water the plant, and ultimately that kills all of the vine weevil. But I try and keep the garden as low maintenance as possible, so I think in future I'm just going to grow my Hukas in beds and not in pots. Next up, I have a plant called Actia simplex, and it's the plant just behind me here. I really love this plant for its dark, deep-cut foliage and flower spikes of pinky white flowers, which are really popular with both bees and butterflies. The flower spikes also come out quite late in the season, between September and October, so providing food for the bees and butterflies when there's not a lot of other flowers out in the garden. Actias originate from Asia and from some parts of Russia. They're herbaceous perennial plants, which means they're going to die right back to the ground over winter. They're most happy grown in damp, shady conditions, although in a moisture-retentive soil they can take some sun. Actias can also be divided, which is best done in autumn or in the fall, into large plants. I have 2 varieties of Actia in this garden, Chocoholic, which is this one here, and definitely my favourite variety, and another one called James Compton, although James Compton isn't quite as dark as Chocoholic. For a lot of the year, they provide a similar kind of role as my Hukas used to, in giving a really nice dark contrast to my hosta beds. But the thing I love about Actia is that the flower spikes actually get up to 1.20 meters tall, so in the summer they give that height that I think is so important to have in a border to give that immersive feeling to your planting. Finally, I have a plant that I haven't grown before, and it's an astilbe called chocolate shogun. Astilbes are native to the Far East and North of America. And I think the reason why I haven't grown them before is because I normally associate astilbes with very bright block planting schemes. And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and the beauty of plants is absolutely in the eye of the beholder, I tend to prefer a more muted colour palette. This astilbe though has a much darker colour palette with its divided chocolate bronze foliage, which is almost fern-like in appearance. Astilbe is normally like a damp woodland area to grow in, but chocolate shogun can actually take quite a lot more sun. If you want a really nice dark foliage plant though that can take full sun and drought conditions, definitely check out Sedum Jose Aubergine, which is a plant that's a favourite of mine and I featured in my top 3 plants to propagate by division video. As well as the beautiful dark foliage though, this being an astilbe, you still get those beautiful tall, narrow plumes of pink flowers which are held on red stems. These are really popular with pollinators and in some regions also provide habitat for dragonflies and for hummingbirds. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe, and I'd love to know your favourite plants that you're growing in your own gardens with dark foliage. Until next time, thanks for watching and enjoy the wildlife in your garden.